Welcome to the Champions of Change podcast, where we celebrate the inspiring stories of Black male educators who are transforming schools and empowering the next generation. Each episode highlights their journeys, challenges, and triumphs as they break barriers, uplift communities, and redefine what it means to lead in education. Tune in to be inspired, informed, and motivated by the powerful voices of those making a positive impact where it matters most, in our classrooms and in our schools. And now your host, Dr. Sharon H. Porter. Welcome to Champions of Change podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sharon H. Porter, visionary of the book collaboration Champions of Change, Black Male Educators Making a Positive Impact in Schools. I am thrilled to bring you another phenomenal educator for this episode, Dr. Darryl Williams. Dr. Darryl L. Williams holds a doctorate in education from the University of Maryland, College Park. He has over 25 years of school leadership experience. Dr. Williams currently serves as a professor of practice in the Department of Teacher Education and Professional Development in the School of Education and Urban Studies at Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland. Prior to his role in higher education, he was the superintendent of Baltimore County Public Schools for 4 years. He served in many leadership roles in Montgomery County Public Schools, Maryland for 25 years. It is indeed my honor to welcome my guest, Dr. Darryl L. Williams. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and it's an honor just to follow your work, your incredible work over the years and what I see that you're doing. So thank you for also being a champion of change and all that you have done in your career and what you are continuing to do. And you know, we notice that it's all about the students.
Absolutely.
And you do it. And I can tell that your work is from the heart. So we say it's from the heart and mind. So thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Well, Dr. Williams, you have had such a remarkable career spanning over 25 years in educational leadership. What initially inspired you to become an educator, and how has that motivation evolved over time?
So I didn't want to become an educator. I wanted to be an architect. And I remember having the conversation with my 10th grade math teacher. And she said, fine, let's prepare for that work. And the more I studied and prepared, the more I was just fascinated about mathematics. But I got even more fascinated about what she does or was doing with students each and every day. And so that sparked that interest. So I remember my senior year talking to her. She was a Fisk University graduate, a proud Fisk University graduate, an HBCU. And I told her that I was thinking about still architect, but she said, you know, you have a gift. I've watched you work with your classmates. I've watched some of the leadership skills, even at that age. You might want to consider choosing math, and if you choose math, you can go any way you wanted to. And I remember choosing math with a minor in education. And so I had some wonderful teachers along the way. And I think they were planting seeds back when I was in junior high school. But I still remember my high school math teacher who really planted that seed. And so I really wanted to thank her. And I had a cousin who worked in Prince George's County Public Schools as a kindergarten teacher for over 42 years. And I was just impressed with summers being off or summer school and just her knowledge. And that was just impressive. So I was fortunate to have these educators in my life that planted the seeds. And when I got to college, I realized this was the route I wanted to take. And I finished Hampton University and came back and started teaching. And I enjoyed that. And actually, I know I probably put in the bio 25 years, but I will be celebrating come June 37 years in public education. And I am still enjoying it.
That is Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. And what you said really speaks to the influence of teachers
Yes, yeah,
as students are coming along, whether it's elementary, middle, or high school. But the
yeah.
power of that influence that teachers have is alive and well even today. So I really like that. And reading more information about you, I saw that you started your teaching career right where you went to high school at Benjamin Banneker Academic High School. Oh
Oh,
my goodness.
yes.
How did that experience shape your leadership philosophy going back to where you went to school?
Well, coming into the field of education as a young black male, I didn't know I had an opportunity to kind of be like a first pick. The first job that came to me, I ran after, and I remember back in that time period, the options, and the folks will kill me, but I'm gonna put it out there. The options were a middle school in D.C., Eastern High School, and Benjamin Banneker
Wow.
Academic High School, and so the one school I knew well was where my alma mater. It was my alma mater where I graduated. And so I was somewhat reluctant because I just remember those teachers being very good at their craft. They had the experience and knowledge, and it was a college prep high school. And
Wow.
what could I have to offer coming in as a brand new teacher? And I remember the interview, and I remember the principal calling me saying, I want to offer you the job. And I had two other offers, and I said, I'm going to go back to my alma mater. And what I didn't realize when I returned, almost the legacy that I started. So my own teachers were still in the building, and the
Wow.
stories they would tell me about myself, I thought I was somewhat quiet, but I really wasn't. They knew I had a little sneaky attitude, a sneaky personality. There were some very bright, brilliant people in that school, and I was just glad to be in their midst. But what I started to do is to show students, you not have to be gifted at everything. Find your little niche, find what you're good at, and develop that. And so, over those years I was there, it was such a wonderful opportunity to give back to my alma mater. I kind of knew what students would have to deal with in a college prep school. I kind of knew that we were somewhat still new in DC, and not everybody appreciated this new high school and students coming from all over the district. So that empathy and sympathy I could actually provide, and the fact that teaching a subject that I knew some students were afraid of, I learned then I'm teaching my students the content of math. So it caused me to build some relationships. I probably was a little tough. You know how being a new teacher, you you,
Oh
you
yeah.
start off being tough and then you ease up a little bit. And to this day, I still keep in contact with some of my former students,
Wow.
by the way, who now are parents and they got graduates in college and so forth, is amazing. But that experience was wonderful. That experience taught me how to teach. And even though it was college prep, I learned about differentiation. I learned about the different strategies, because not everybody had the gift of understanding mathematics. And again, I just knew I had to teach my students and I wanted them to be successful. So I think I walked away from that understanding the power of family. We used to sing this song called We Are a Family at Banneker, and I think to this day they still teach that. And so I understood the beauty of staff members supporting our students, supporting the families, attending events, being an advisor and writing letters of recommendation. I mean, those are the types of things that really are the essence and the characteristics of a successful high school. And I'm proud to say that I believe Banneker received probably 3 blue ribbon
Wow.
national awards for the work that it has done over the many years that it was open. So I learned a lot, and I still keep in contact with staff members
Wow.
They still treat me like little Darryl, and I'm okay with that.
I
You know,
love
I'm
it.
a grown man.
That's
You know
right.
how that happens. So I think that was the beginning and the forming of my leadership that I
Yes.
really did not anticipate I would get to this point in my
Wow.
career. All I wanted to do was teach my students and have fun with them. Didn't think over those 30 plus years that I would end up in these various roles. And I'm very grateful, very
Amazing. I
grateful.
love it. I love it. I too was a math teacher, so I can appreciate that. I love it. I love it. Now, Dr. Williams, as a Black male educator and an educational leader, what challenges did you face in your early career and how did you navigate those challenges?
So the challenges I think that we all face is that burnout. And now the term is, I didn't know what it was then, the imposter syndrome. You know, am I good enough? Should I be here? Was I successful with my students? And so there were some good days and bad days. And what I learned was that I'm not going to meet the needs of every student's daily, but I'm the next day I'm gonna try again to try to work with the students to understand them. The challenges was, there weren't that many Black men in education. Now, I will say, growing up in DC, I had some phenomenal Black male teachers in junior high, not so many in high school, but I just remember these gentlemen who were stern, they knew their content, they had a swag, they were cool, that's what we would call them. And so some of the challenges is that I didn't have necessarily someone like me to turn to. And so I had to lean on some folks who just didn't look like me. Some white males, some white females, and they embraced me. They gave me strategies. They helped me. So some of that was the challenges of just being the only one, maybe in a department or in a school. Also, the other challenge, folks say this even to this day. Well, the starting salary, folks complain about the money. And so I learned a little bit about budgeting and understanding what I needed to do. That meant, every day I couldn't go out to lunch. I had to make my lunch. So some of those things was, when I talked to my friends who were engineers or architects and they were making a six figure salary and I wasn't making that, I had to realize that I had to survive and be very strategic at an early age. And so some of the challenges is just sometimes the pressure that you put on yourself to be successful, and how society may see you. Like, is that all you want to be? I remember somebody saying to me,
Mhm.
you just want to be a teacher? And I said, yeah. I said, that's the greatest thing. And the first thing out of their mouths was about, well, you don't have good benefits, the salary's low. I said, but it's the joy that you're touching lives.
Yeah.
Probably couldn't articulate it back then. Now I can.
Right.
You touching lives. You're making some changes and some differences in someone's life that you don't even know that you're doing. And you
Yes.
hear those things a year later, 10 years later. So those were kind of the challenges. Just being alone, imposter syndrome, trying to be successful. Was I good enough? And then I was crazy enough, and I think DC Public Schools was pushing. We all had to go back and get our masters. So you had
Wow.
to, you're teaching and going to school in the afternoon and just balancing all that. That burnout is real. That burnout is so real. And I remember back in the day, those were many of the challenges. Having the resources, maybe not having all the resources that you needed, versus some of our influent areas or affluent schools. But
Absolutely.
we survive. We survive.
Absolutely. And those are still challenges today. They really are. Absolutely. Now, you've been a strong advocate for equity in education. What does equity in education mean to you, and what are some of those key strategies that you've actually implemented to promote equity?
So, what I didn't know I was doing back when I was teaching was giving and using those equitable strategies to our students. It's just giving them what they need. And many times also not only what they need, but also pushing them. pushing them to experience rigor. And so for me, that over the years, my whole goal was not everybody could have gone to a Banneker academic high school, a college prep school. But everywhere I worked, whether I was a teacher, assistant principal, principal, or central office administrator, I wanted folks to have somewhat of an opportunity like that. That access and opportunity was very important to me, where encouraging my students to explore advanced level courses or explore opportunities outside of the school, outside of their community, encouraging our students to travel abroad, to study many languages, to take up an instrument, to be in that club, to be on a team. All of those opportunities, I just felt I had access to that because of a particular school that I went to, not because of where I was raised, but this my family, my students, my staff members, my teachers were pushing us for us to always go for opportunities. And so for me, when I think about equity, just making sure our students have what they need and then pushing them even further. What I found, many of our students, even to this day, they only know their community. They have not been outside their community. And so encouraging those opportunities for field trips, learning different languages. I went abroad when I was a 10th grader at Banneker. I went away for a summer to South America. What a great experience for this inner city kid to go away and explore a whole different culture, months away from my family and having a host family. Those are are examples I would say around equity. And then also resources. When I worked in Montgomery County, we have some schools, we used to say they were in the red zone and green zone, and that was around staffing. And what I realized, some schools might need to be staffed differently based on the needs of the students. And that's okay, even though there may be some communities against additional staffing because they worry about what they're going to lose. But I always felt that and justify that, yes, some schools might need a math coach, or a reading specialist. All schools need to have a counselor in their building. Those are some of the non-negotiables, particularly if the data is saying our kids need it and deserve it, we should be able to provide it. So, sometimes that would get me in trouble because of how I advocate or what I think is right. But I just learned that, and I've seen the success in that differentiated staffing and providing access and opportunities for our students. I've seen the success over the years, and it can work. So that's how I see, and that's how I continue to live this when I now try to inspire those to be administrators. You do what's right for students. You hold fast to that and don't let anyone take you away from that focus. So that's how I see equity, and that's been my work over the years.
Thank you. I really love that. And you talked about now your role getting Black male educators to become leaders. So many students of color truly struggle to see themselves represented in leadership, and you even alluded to that even as a young teacher. How do you think increasing Black male representation in education impacts student success?
Oh, I think our students need to see Black male leaders, Black male educators in our school buildings. I worry about when there is the singleton in the building and how much pressure that might be on that individual. But absolutely, I see the importance. And again, I remember seeing that when I was growing up. I didn't realize how fortunate I was to have a science teacher, Black male, Mr. Sims. See, I remember their names, Mr. Sims, Mr. Swain, who was teaching geography. Mr. Neal, who was our assistant principal. I just remember trying to emulate them. They dressed well, sometimes shirt and tie, sometimes not. I think it's important for our students to see that, because we do know that education is continuing to be a female dominant profession is starting to change that over the years. And so some of the work that I'm doing now with a colleague, we're looking at black males in education and black males in administration. Now, I still support my females, so I don't want anyone to come after me because I promoted many females as well as males in leadership roles. But to your point, we just see that there's a scarcity around that. And I think a lot of it might be the perception that the society has, that's not a money making field and whatever, that's a much more nurturing field. I had some conversations with some young men a few months ago, and that's what they're saying. People are saying, why do you want to go into that? You shouldn't be the nurturer. And I just think that's such a misconception. We do need to have that representation in our school buildings so our students can see themselves and have conversations and learn from our black male educators, especially administration. And in administration, I have to tell my black male educators, make sure your instructional focus is just as strong as the relationship and disciplinary approach, because we have to have the totality when we go into these leadership roles and not just be pigeonholed to one type of area. So continue to build those instructional strategies, continue to be a part of the instructional leadership team, do what you need to do to build that aspect of the work as well.
That is so true. So true. And so I'm really grateful for the work that you're doing now in higher ed because it directly impacts K-12. So thank you for that. Now, as a superintendent of Baltimore County, you led through a global pandemic. You led through a cyber attack. I mean, what were some of those biggest leadership lessons that you learned from those crises?
So one leadership lesson is you got to have the right people in the right position. And the other piece that I've worked with this system is leadership can be distributed. So even though I'm the superintendent, your voice, your opinion matters, especially if someone coming new. So I came into the system, although I worked in another Maryland system, I didn't know that school system. So when I would talk about an issue, I wanted to hear from the others who've been in the system 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. But I also realized, and you know this as the principal, in a school building, there are people who have leadership roles, unofficial leadership roles. So I've learned I can get the best advice from the custodian who's working and cleaning after hours, who would tell me things about a building or a central office. I learned the best things from a secretary who would say to me, I know we got this new platform, but let me tell you how frustrating it is to actually utilize this new platform. And I've been in this system for 25 years. So I've learned just that leadership can be distributed, and people in unofficial roles, they have so much to offer. Now, Dr. Porter, I will say those 4 years in leading the third largest school district in Maryland through a pandemic and cyber attack was no easy task. But in order for us to thrive and survive that, it relied on a team. And so resting on those who knew the technology, resting on those who had connections with individuals, and being out there and keeping my board updated every week about what was happening. That communication was important. But, through it all, we all survived that pandemic, and for us, the cyber attack. And, it was so comforting after it was all said and done. There was an audit about the work that we did with the cyber attack, and the officials said we did a good job because in 3 days, we had our students connected to staff. It wasn't 100%, but I was committed. I said to my team, whatever we need to do, we got to get our students connected, because there was that learning loss that we all experience, and they couldn't afford any more days disconnected to their staff. So for me, it was all about the leadership. It was all about the teamwork, distributed leadership. Relationships were important. But the best times I had was going into those schools and seeing our students, talking to our students, hearing their stories. I would meet with a group of seniors from each of our high school right before graduation to understand, tell me what worked well for you, what didn't, what did we need to change. And you know how that happened, Dr. Porter? I remember my first graduation as superintendent. I knew of the school, but I didn't know the students. And all these students are walking across the stage, people are cheering. I just didn't have like that connection. And I was like, oh, you know what? I got to do something about this. So every spring, I will block off all this chunk of time to be in schools. I said, the principals, bring me some students. I just don't want to hear from the high flyers. I want to hear from any kind of student to hear about their experience. And for me, I enjoyed that probably better than the students, but their voice was equally important. So we knew how we were doing in ways that we could improve. And whatever feedback they gave, I gave it right back to our leadership team. There's some tweaks we need to make. We need to celebrate. And so those were wonderful 4 years as superintendent. And I've learned a lot. It's a tough job. You're the face of everything.
Yes.
Everything, the good, bad, and the ugly. I would go to the barber shop and people would line up wanting to talk to me. And I was okay with that. I was just that type of person. In the grocery store, they would see me like, I can't believe he's out here shopping. Yeah, I'm out here shopping. And they would talk to me. Sometimes there were some issues, and I would get their number, turn it over to a staff member, and try to problem solve.
Wow.
I was just that type of hands-on person.
Wow.
It wore me out a little bit, but that was the best job to really make change.
Yes.
To really make change, systemic change. We didn't complete everything, but I was pleased with the work that I was able to do within the 4 years.
That's amazing. Thank you for that. And thank you for your time, because I tell you, I'm sure it was not easy. So thank you for that. But now you're serving as a professor of practice at Morgan State University. Go Bears.
Yes.
What excites you the most about preparing the next generation of educational leaders?
What excites me is that there are folks who want to go into this field in spite of all that they read about, all that they hear about out there. What we're seeing nowadays, there are folks who say, I want to make a systemic change. I want to make a bigger impact. And so what excites me is that we have a cohort of students from the area of Baltimore, Baltimore City, Baltimore County. We got folks from Prince George's, and they really want to lead. They really want to do the work, the hard work. They know it's messy. They know it's a little bit out of their comfort zone. They don't have their classrooms anymore. They're looking at a bigger team or running a school. So that excites me because they're hungry for the work. And so every class, before we start, I always do a check-in. All right, let's check in. How are we doing? What's happening in a school building? Tell me what's on your mind. And it's a little therapeutic that we kind of just do that check-in and sometimes problem solve. Somebody might be dealing with something. So that excites me. Also, the work that we've been doing, Baltimore City wrote a grant, the Wallace Foundation, to really look at their principal pipeline. So we were fortunate to partner with them along with Towson University and MSDE. So this is year 4 of this grant. And so I'm able to work with folks who are closest to the work in a school building and really help redesign our program to make sure our students are getting hands-on activity. It's just not theory. And of course, we don't touch the theory, but let's talk about the application. What's really happening when you have to have an adaptive challenge? You're dealing with an adaptive challenge that you just can't pull a manual or a policy and follow that. You know, you can look at that, but now let's talk about the constraints, the context of the situation and try to problem solve. That excites me. And, you know, after you've been doing this a while, I'm sure you do it too. I love to tell war stories. I tell a war story, one or two each session, because you can't help it.
You can't help it. That's right. I love it. I know those students are fortunate and they are no glad to have you as their professor. So much knowledge, so much knowledge. So kudos to them. So what advice would you give to aspiring school leaders about really navigating the complexities of educational leadership?
Yeah. The first thing, don't take it personally. Um, there are going to be a lot of people in your corner, and there's going to be that one person, that one group that may think differently, different core values, may come at you a certain way. Don't take it personally. It may feel personal because it's what you believe in and what you've shared, or a program or initiative that you are implementing. But I would say just don't take it personally. Also, I say this, and I got myself in trouble with one person I was working with. There's that you got to take care of yourself. You have to take care of yourself. Like I said, I gave you an example earlier about going to the barber shop. For me, when I was superintendent, going every week, getting that fresh cut, sitting in that chair, sometimes sleeping in that chair, because that for me was a way of that mental health, just like just unplugging. Even though I was talking to people at time, just unplugging a little bit. They saw Darryl. They didn't see Dr. Williams. They saw Darryl. So sometimes it's unplugging that away from the work, exercising, eating, making sure you eat, because as administrators, we miss meals. We working so hard. You look up, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You didn't have lunch. Having some healthy snacks, enjoying time with your family and friends. I just think you got to have that balance, because you could burn out, and you can be someone who would be a little disgruntled and probably would want to continue in the field. So I just think having some balance and some boundaries. I was fortunate as superintendent. The board, for whatever reason, knew that I went to church on Sunday, and unless there was an emergency, that was the day that I would not get an email, I wouldn't get a call, unless it was something very, very important. So having those conversations and having a board or a supervisor that understood your schedule. If you got young kids and you got to go to events, bring your kids with you. I used to take my kids to all kind basketball games, plays, musicals. Wife was right there with me. And that's another piece. Sometimes they need to see there's this other side of the individual, that you're very committed to your family. That balance was very important. And I don't want to go too deep into this last comment, but I'll say this because I'm no longer the superintendent. But I used to go to board meetings and have an index card with some scriptures on it. Sometimes you got to just look at a particular encouraging word to get you through.
Absolutely. I love that. Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Love that. Oh my goodness. So Dr. Williams, in the book Collaboration, Champion of Change, Black Male Educators Making a Positive Impact in Schools, that will be out the last week in February, you
Yes.
write about academic achievement as well as parent engagement. And those are two major areas in K-12 education. What are some of the key takeaways that you want readers to walk away with after reading your chapter?
So for the academic achievement, I want them to walk away saying, look at your data and do what you possibly can to change that data. It may take 6 months, it may take 6 years, but to focus on a data point. And in that chapter, I think I looked at one data point particularly, but there were several data points. But to look at one thing and grab a team of experts, those who are closest to the work and those who might not be, and developing that team to really look at ways to problem solve, to look at a problem of practice. What can we do differently to get better outcomes. And so sometimes in leadership, people think, oh, it must be, the direction must come from this one person. So in essence, what I was writing about is a team effort. I had folks on a team looking at the work who may not had any experience in that particular area, may have been closest to the area, and the voice of our students and teachers and parents was extremely important. So that was the essence of that chapter, about picking an area, focus on that area, looking at the data, and bringing about a change through teamwork. The second one was the parent and community engagement. And so that's where you recognize, and I say this all the time, and I know the term now is a little different. There are community schools, technical name, community schools. But I felt everywhere that I work, it was a community school, with or without the title. And having the engagement of the community and parents to help make change was so important. So that chapter just speaks to getting our families involved. And that doesn't always mean showing up. Again, it's that voice, it's having activities, it's hearing them as to what we can do differently, because they're our customers when we're looking at parent and community engagement. Let's go to them. And so I think I talk about the work that I was doing as a superintendent and some of the aha moments I had. And I think I even used a family member. I gave an example of a family member situation. But what I just found that to be equally important, looking at the academic achievement, but our parents and community can also help us with that academic achievement and to get our folks engaged and involved. So that's kind of like the two chapters that I wrote about. And that's what I want folks to walk away, that you can make a difference. Doesn't have to be as big as one of those chapters that I talked about. It can start small and build. It could be a 6-month turnaround. It can be a 6-year turnaround. Just do something. And I share this with principals. I always say, what's your legacy? When they're aspiring assistant principals, aspiring principals, think about your legacy in your current role. If I could just ask you, tell me 2 or 3 things that you felt you have created to make that classroom better or that school better. And that's the kind of leader I always wanted to be, is to leave that legacy that I made a difference in something in that building or someone to do better, a teacher, administrator. So that's what those 2 chapters are really all about.
Wow, I love it. I love it. And I am encouraging the viewers and listeners to contact Dr. Williams should you want to purchase the book from him. That will be out again by the end of February. And Dr. Williams, just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a guest right here on the Champions of Change podcast and for being a contributor to the book collaboration. So thank you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. And once again, thank you for what you do. Been following you for years. I appreciate everything that you do, and I wish you well.
Thank you. Now, how can viewers and listeners connect or follow you?
So I am on LinkedIn. That's probably the best. I used to tweet. I don't do that anymore. So LinkedIn. I'm also, Morgan has a page that I'm on their page in the School of Education, or you can see me and there's some contact information. We are a part of a center called the National Center for the Elimination of Educational Disparities, in which I'm one of the assistant directors doing research, just looking at those issues how do we improve our schools and work with our school administrators and teachers. So those are some ways in which they can reach out to me.
I love it. Still doing the work. I love it. Still doing the work. I absolutely love it. I tell you, what an amazing episode for today. This is it for today, guys. This is the Champions of Change podcast. This is where we celebrate the powerful voices and impactful work of Black male educators making a positive impact in our classrooms and in our schools. Their dedication not only shapes young minds, but it also inspires entire communities. If my guest journey in education moved you today, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review, share this episode with others who need to hear it. Let's keep learning, let's keep leading, and definitely let's keep championing change. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you for joining the Champions of Change podcast. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join us for a new episode every Tuesday, wherever you listen to your podcast.